PGA Nation, we are back, and we are back in a big way. Of course, your new king of the draft. I am proudly accepting my crown and my title, and I will be drafting first this week. But of course, since I won, we had to bring in some big guns this week to draft with us. And someone in a real threat to take me down, Geoff Fienberg. If you play DFS or bet on golf, you already know who he is. You've probably made some money betting with him. We are stoked, Geoff, to have you on drafting with us tonight. How you doing?
Betting with, betting against. There's money to be made on both sides often. I'm doing great. Memorial, one of the favorites on the calendar. It's a great part of the golf season right now. Maybe one of the best months we'll have all year starting right now. So let's get at it. I'm excited to join you.
Yeah, that's well said. There's a string of tournaments that we get that aren't majors that almost feel like majors, and this is one of them. This one stands out as one of those really fun tournaments every year. It's a great look and feel. Spence will break down the course for us because it's a tough course, and it's definitely one where you can get an edge by understanding what type of golfer should be able to find success here. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. You are correct. We are bringing on a big gun this week to try to take us on. I'm going to say this, Joel, and I'll toot our own horns a little bit. So we've been keeping track, and you can find it in the description of the chat on this video. I'll post it tomorrow, but we've been keeping track of the scoring system. Essentially what it comes down to is if you win between the four teams, you get 3 points. You come second, you get 2. 1 is 1. And then if you come in last place, a fourth, you get 0. An extra point is given if your lineup cashes. And we've done this 3 weeks now. Joe Nicely of Rotoballer came on. Byron Lindeque came on. Last week we had Luke on. And with this scoring system that's been put into place, the guests that we've had on are not doing very well outside of Joe Nicely. So, Geoff is going to have to be the one that's going to have to bring everybody back into play here. And I would give a similar answer to the audience, unfortunately. The audience has started very slowly with this. They have come third, second, and fourth. So all the points right now, Joel, seem to be going to you and I.
Well, that is how we like it. That's how we drew it up. But we are here to be defeated. So there's a lot of weeks, and trust me, those streaks run hot and they run cold. So that will change. Team audience, we're also going to need a big week out of you guys. You guys are what makes this show. We appreciate you guys. Brian England in the chat already. Thanks for coming on. Anyone else? We know there's a lot of regulars. Get in the chat now. If you have questions, get them out. But you'll be drafting along with us. So in case you're new to the show, make sure you log in on YouTube so you can draft along and get in the chat. I will explain the rules of the draft again before we get started. But before we do, I want to look at the actual field this week. It's a little bit unique. Only 72 golfers, top 50 plus ties are making the cut. So while there is a cut, it's not a real full cut event. Most guys are going to make the cut, which should allow you to be more creative with your build. You're almost not quite guaranteed, but you're almost guaranteed 4 days from every golfer. Before we kind of dive into it, Spence, I want to hear from you. What are you looking for this week at Muirfield Village?
Yeah, one of the things I respect most about Jack Nicklaus and his design here at Muirfield Village has been this constant belief that he has that the course is meant to test players from a complete tee to green acumen. If you look at this tournament, there's no doubt about it. It started to become this pitch and scramble for a handful of years when you look at Patrick Cantlay's 19 under par victory in 2019. But since that result, Nicklaus has really started to try to turn this test back into something that's going to be a dynamic challenge that's going to be added to the mix. We saw him add nearly 150 yards to the facility. That's enhanced the challenge over the last 4 seasons. We've gotten brand new green complexes. They produce some extremely sinister results. And then you add that to the 4-inch thick rough that surrounds the layup. This becomes a very challenging tee to green test. And even just that rough part of the answer has been one of the things missing from the off the tee element that I don't think this course had before, that now all of a sudden turns this into a much more difficult test for players. You look at the last 5 years, average winning score has been exactly 10 under par. You look at the last 2 years, it's even less than that. And I think there's a few critical factors here that we have to at least take into account before we move into the show. So one, you have easier to hit fairways. That is going to add more of a strategic element since golfers can succeed if they avoid this rough. That happens in both distance and accuracy. You have the quick green complexes that I talked about. They are small in stature. They had difficulty since this continued nature of the thick rough around the putting surface is going to place a higher emphasis on approach play than usual. That's one of the reasons why my model projected that you see this decline in GIR projection over the last 5 seasons. And then you add those two factors together and you get this devaluation of putting, and it's an expanded need for your critical tee to green total. So, I wouldn't call this a perfect venue. I know those are a lot of positive that I just talked about, but it is going to be nice for 4 days to have more creative golf, more pronounced rough, very quick greens, a score that's going to probably be around the single digit under par zone. You mentioned it, Joel. It's a 72-man field, top 50 and ties get through to the weekend, but there is still a cut there. I would much prefer, I think golf has gone in the wrong direction, unfortunately. I would much prefer 142-man, 144-man fields and have a real cut that comes into play. But at least on the surface level of what this is, you get a challenging course that's going to test the golfers this weekend. If I can only pick one or the other, I'd rather have the high-end players in the field getting tested. So I guess you can't get exactly what we want, but it is going to be a fun tournament this week.
There you have it. It will be a test this week on the golf course. Geoff, I would love to ask you, is there anything in particular you're overly or waiting more than normal at this course this week, whether that's driving accuracy around the green? Is there one thing you're specifically looking for?
I mean, look at the guys that win here. They're truly like immaculate iron players, like for the most part, right? It's a run of high end, like just high end, I guess, low odd winners, although there have been outliers. And the guys that chase these high end players are of that lesser tier skill set. So we know that skill set can hang here. Just look at last year's leaderboard beyond Scotty Scheffler. I mean, obviously Morikawa was elite, but look at the guys that were right next. It's certainly not bombers, but just straight like flushers, iron, like high end iron play.
Ball strikers. There you have it. So that's what we're going to be after. That's what we're drafting between. We are drafting tonight. So as I pull the draft board up, as I mentioned, I've already tooted my own horn once, but I will do it one more time, not shamelessly. I am excited that I will be picking the draft order tonight. And with picking the draft order, I will be going first. Geoff, you will be going second. Spencer, you will be going third. And the audience, you will be drafting in the final spot tonight with 2 on the snake. There we go. Get Geoff back in the draft room. The way it works, if you're new to the show, get on YouTube, draft along with Team Audience. We're all drafting DraftKings lineups, but you do have to be able to afford your lineup in an actual DraftKings tournament. So you can't just take all the best players. You need to be able to draft accordingly so that you can actually play your lineup. And it's your typical snake style draft. So I'll go first, Geoff second, Spencer third. Audience, you'll have 2 in a row, and then we'll go back again. I'm on the clock first, and there's no surprise who I'm taking. Right? I'm going to take Scotty Scheffler. I'm going to take the best player in the world by a wide margin. They've priced him up. He's guaranteed. Everybody's guaranteed 4 days. I think not everybody. Yes, there are some cuts, but most players are going to be able to make the cut. I think that gives you an edge with playing Scheffler because it's a little less risk when you have to go down to that 6K range to find some value to play with them. If you're going to play up for a 13K Scheffler, you're not guaranteed 4 days, but you're likely to get 4 days from most of these guys. So I don't feel like you need to be as balanced, and enables you to put Scheffler in your lineup. Now, if Scheffler ends up being 45% owned, I'm going to be super disappointed because that's just too high. But if he stays even just under 40%, I'll be thrilled because I think Scheffler, even if he doesn't win this tournament, I can't even imagine him not falling in the top 5 the way he's playing. So I love Scotty Scheffler. I don't know how long I need to explain why I like Scotty Scheffler. If you're following along all year, you can see why. But Geoff, is there any reason you wouldn't play Scotty this week? And then you're up with the second pick.
Yeah, I for sure would have played Scotty. And it's the fact that, the missing the cut parameters at the back end are clearly different than the regular week where you feel much more confident in your ability to stuff something in there or sneak a couple across the line. I mean, I'd be shocked if he isn't hyper popular, but I think it's the obvious one pick.
Agreed. And that's why I had to go there. The ownership numbers, not ideal, but sometimes you just got to get different elsewhere. All right, Geoff, second pick. Who are you going with here?
I mean, it's so embarrassing that this is how I have to follow a Scotty Scheffler pick, but I feel a lot at the top is splitting hairs, and I feel like I'll still get something I want up there, even if you guys make your moves. You guys are, you're the sharks here, so I could get eaten, and I don't know if this is the prudent play. But I'm going to ride Andrew Novak at 7,100. I think it's going to give me a lot of flexibility as we continue here for the lineup that I know I'm going to want to build. But it's just such consistent result week in, week out. Obviously, the PGA Championship got the best of him, but for the most part, the guy has played well at some of the at difficult courses as well. But it's the approach play, it's the around the green game. Obviously, the putting can be a problem, but the approach around the green combination is what I'm looking for. Hope he continues just his consistent results this year, and I'll be happy.
Geoff, taking Andrew Novak in the first round is an extremely sharp pick in this draft. Scotty Scheffler has to go first, but taking value early before others can get to him is sharp. And especially if you know me, I take Andrew Novak every week. So there was no chance he was getting back to you for a second pick. So that was a great pick on your end. I love Andrew Novak this week as well. Spence, would love to get your take on Novak, and then you're up with your first pick as well.
Yeah, I mean, you asked the question, Joel, of what is the negative of taking Scotty Scheffler? In a normal situation, nothing. I would argue that even at this 42-45% clip that we're seeing, it's not a high enough ownership with it. He should be 50% plus. Yeah. The negative of taking Scotty Scheffler is exactly what Geoff just did, because we have a 72-man field here. And unfortunately, like you and I have had this conversation, it feels like for 2 years now. We used to have this conversation weekly about Eric Cole, that the market just would not adjust Eric Cole's price. We have now reached that territory with Andrew Novak. The difference with Novak is we've seen real win equity come into play with Novak. That pick indirectly, well, maybe more so directly for you, is kind of a damaging one, because I agree. I don't think Novak was going to get back to you regardless, because I was going to take Novak either at the 103 or the 202 coming back. Really savvy pick from Novak. He is one of the biggest underpriced players on the board. And that's what's so difficult about this show if we're trying to figure out how to build lineups, because now you have to go in a non-Andrew Novak route. And that's what's exciting about the show also, is because you're going to have to figure out how to pivot away from that. So I think the first two picks are very savvy. They make a lot of sense. But probably does affect you, Joel, more than it even does me, because there's more ways that I can build it to start.
All right. Well, there you have it. You got your first pick here. Are you going to go to the top of the board, or are you going to start with value as well?
I'm going to do a hybrid of it. I'm going to put myself somewhere in the middle. Without giving away too much of the game plan on this, I do think when you jump to the very top of the board, you want to jump to the absolute very top of the board with Scotty. There are some question marks for me from price tag and ownership around that mark there. But there is one of the ways I build my model, and I talk about it quite frequently, and I know I run things from a longer term duration than most people. So you're going to have a lot of that long-term data that's going to enter the mix. But I'm going to give a short-term answer that is something you normally don't hear from me. One of the things that I look for inside of tournaments is the ball striking that a player produced mixed with the baseline projection of the putter. We know the putter is an extremely volatile statistic. And this golfer that I am taking right now has been ice cold with the putter for a really long time. The thing that I want to add to that, though, is I talked about the tee to green acumen. Geoff talked about the ball striking that's needed. Those are all the uptick marks that you're looking for. From a dispersion of scoring output historically over the last 5 years, the putting return of players who win this tournament is about 25 to 28% of the strokes gained needed. To put that into a relative perspective, most events are somewhere between 36 to 42% in a lot of these spots, kind of can give or take in those things. So putting is not as important here. We've seen Scotty at this tournament in the past, not necessarily win, but go ice cold with the putter and be able to work himself up the leaderboard. The golfer I'm taking here is not Scotty Scheffler. Don't stretch that by any sense of the imagination, but I'm going to take Daniel Berger here. I talked about last week of golfers that underachieved based off of the results that they should have gotten. Berger was an extremely popular commodity that burnt the space. he should have been inside of the top 25 entering the weekend, but went ice cold with that putter, as I talked about. I think this is a prime bounce back spot for him. I think this is a ripe opportunity for him to be able to work himself up the leaderboard. And if the pieces can fall correctly, which, yes, you are asking a lot from the putter here, be neutral or better, all of a sudden Daniel Berger has the skill set to be able to compete. Can he compete and beat Scotty Scheffler? I don't know. But at least in this particular situation here with Scotty off the board, I have a ball striking person that I can trust the data. And, Geoff mentioned we want to find elite iron players. Like, this is a player with me. If you look at the recent and the long-term data, inside of the top 10 in my model of all the key areas that I'm looking for.
I like Daniel Berger as well in the 8K range. He's a value bid. You can be balanced. The last time he played here, meanwhile, it was 3 years ago. He gave you a top 5 finish. So he can do well on this course. I think that's a savvy pick. Team audience, you are on the clock. Brian and Andrew, we're going to look to you guys as captains of the audience. You guys are going to need 2 picks. Brian, great job getting some nominations in. We need as soon as somebody doubles those nominations, so any of those names are mentioned again, that's your pick. Or you can put some more on nominations out there. But audience, you got 2 here. So we'll need some picks to come in, some more nominations as well. While we wait, Geoff, I want to go to you. Is Daniel Berger on your radar this week?
Yeah, I probably was taking him with my next pick. I thought about taking him in the first round. I was one of the people that got burned by him last week, but Spencer's the best. Like, that explanation was phenomenal, but he is. I'm easy to trust a guy like Daniel Berger to fix the putting, the baseline, all of it. I'm really big on Berger this week, and it's even from like a betting perspective. Those numbers just smaller than I wanted it to be, and that's almost like telling me the books are like, don't bet him. But I'm high on him. Yeah.
Boom. A lot of overlap in terms of who we're interested in, especially early in this draft. So I don't know what that's going to tell you about ownership, but I think we're all aligned on the guys that we're targeting, which is interesting. Audience, great job getting those picks in. It looks like at least one. It looks like both are in, right? It looks like it's going to be Siwoo and Connors. Is that right? Yeah, Siwoo and Connors are locked in. Albert, I'm going to go ahead and nominate you as audience captain for tonight. You were the one who locked in the 2 picks, so we appreciate you guys. Way to get the picks in on time. 2 good picks. I really particularly like Siwoo. Siwoo's just in really good form. He's playing really well. He also has played well here on this course. So I think he's only in the 8K range. Where the price you're getting Siwoo Kim, there's a lot to like about him. I don't really see much reason not to play him, especially because if you look at the last few times he's played here, T15, 4, T13, T9, T18. So he tends to like this course, and the fact that he's coming in really strong form, I think Siwoo's a really good play this week. Spence, you're up with your next pick, but we'd love to get your take on both Connors and Siwoo.
I kind of like the way that Geoff described the Berger thing when we look at prices in the market. I bet Daniel Berger at 40-1, and I think that's a lot lower than people thought. Siwoo gave a very similar output. You could have probably gotten him at 50-1 if you got on that early on Monday. Dropped to 45, has continued to drop. That was the other bet that I had put out there. So I like the Siwoo pick. And then one of the things I talked about with Corey Connors in my Rotoballer article that I wrote this week is this tournament is so driven by finishing position. And that's going to be a very important factor that's going to be coming into play for DraftKings. You have some of these par 5 holes where you can make birdies. A lot of it is avoiding damage. And we've talked about the winning score is probably going to be 10 under par or less. So when you get these more challenging courses, I understand like the counter argument against names like Corey Connors and Tommy Fleetwood, but I think these are ideal setups for them to be able to find real optimal success for DraftKings. And even if that doesn't necessarily mean that they win the tournament, I think they have a heightened chance to be in the optimal lineups that get put together because of a lot of that safety that's built around them. So I like the way that the audience started there. All
right. Great job, team audience. Spencer, you got Daniel Berger off the board. Who do you think with your second pick?
So I talked about Siwoo and Berger being 2 bets I made. I kind of want to get out of this range that I seem to be in right now with the audience, Geoff, and myself. Like, I'd rather pivot into a different area to where we're not all going to be stealing each other's picks every single go around. And I don't know if I could have waited for him. It does feel like the space is moving in other directions than the name I'm about to give, but I'm going to take Colin Morikawa here, and I'm going to trust some of the statistical profile I have on him from both the course history of him being a golfer who probably arguably should have won this tournament last year. I had a ticket on him last year, and he kind of made every mistake down the stretch to not get across the finish line with Scotty, but I'm going to hope that opens up the ability to create some leverage in this spot, because if you look at what Colin has done in his most two recent starts, it leaves a lot to be desired. And I understand ownership is starting to trend a little bit more towards Colin, and we could argue for what that reason is. But if you look at Morikawa's profile, he does have these lapses where he goes cold for a tournament 2 or 3, and then out of nowhere, he just spikes all the way back and ends up winning the thing or coming second. So as long as the long-term profile on him continues to remain good in my model, these are typically the spots I like to take a chance on him. And you want to talk about ball strikers, going to hit a lot of greens in regulation, high upside profile. To me, when we're trying to find value on this board, and I kind of talked about this at the beginning, if I don't have Scotty, I'd almost rather just then move down to Colin being my second choice. I save in the price tag. It's similar ownership to a lot of these names. And as I said, from a roster construction standpoint, there's a lot of different ways I could have gone. It moves me a little bit out of the direction of what the audience and Geoff are doing in a 72-man field. That could be important to be able to pick and choose my players.
All right, Colin Morikawa, interesting pick off the board there. Geoff, I'd love to get your take on any of, but mainly Colin Morikawa and the audience's turn with Siwoo Kim and Corey Connors.
So I mean, Connors, and my pick is probably going to be in the vein of Connors and Siwoo. Spencer even alluded to it. Morikawa, I mean, yeah, I think he's probably, he's very safe here. He seems to be dipping at the moment, but this should be a happy place for him. I mean, a lot of what he was doing kind of felt unsustainable. I don't know. I can't really stand the guy either at the moment, so wouldn't bet him. But just sort of, because I'm so hyper into I see the DraftKings number. I think of the odds. I actually think some of the outright numbers on him are like pretty fair though. Like I saw his number get pretty high this week relative for him and this course. So I don't really have anything bad to say as much as I'd want to.
Ooh, all right. Morikawa endorsed slightly. Geoff, you're up now with your second pick. Novak off the board. You got plenty to spend. Who are you looking at with your second pick?
Spencer alluded to the finishing position. I'm going to have two players here in a moment. I don't know that I got the winner on my roster, but maybe I could find a way to claw just a bunch of things out and find a Sunday hero later in this draft, because I don't know that it's going to be Tommy Fleetwood. But you just open up the numbers. If you were like a data guy who just got into betting golf last month, you would probably be like, I'm going to bet this Tommy Fleetwood guy. Problem is, a lot of us have been here before. And with no cut, I mean, I'll get like at least that, even if he's in 30th on Sunday. I'll climb that leaderboard. We'll be fine. A lot of high-end names even below him on the pricing, so maybe I'm moving early here. But I really want a Tommy on my roster. If not for my only concern really with Tommy is doesn't really have a great course history here. For a course that you think really would work for him, or a course you think he would have at least, had a moment of mixing. I don't think that's ever happened with him, but I'm rostering.
Do you feel confident that this could be the week he gets over the hump and gets a win, or you just like him to get you a good result, not win the tournament?
I'd love for him to win the tournament. That would be awesome. That would just end a lot of talking points, especially to pick something off like Memorial. If it's not going to be a major, this would be right there. The game, if it's not going to be Scotty, it feels like he's got as good of a chance as anyone, honestly, in that next group. And don't get me wrong, he doesn't bring much win equity to the table. But, the 6 guys in front of him on the odds board, not named Scheffler, not a lot of wins there in the last, handful of years either. So, obviously, he there's a lot to pick on Tommy for. But if this thing's going to get past Scheffler, I do believe your Connors, your Siwoos, Burgers, Tommy, like those guys, very live to be part of the Sunday Showdown.
I think that's very fair. It's a very fair point. So Fleetwood off the board 9,400. I mean, I thought he could have been even priced up a little higher there. So I think the price is right. I like the Fleetwood pick there in the second round for Geoff. All right, I got two here. Obviously, with starting with Scheffler, I'm gonna need to find some value to make this work. There's another guy I like a lot who's just been playing really well. Kind of reminds me of another version of Andrew Novak, and that's Bud Cauley. Bud Cauley is, last week he actually third at the Charles Schwab. He already has, since March, he already has 4 top 10s this year. He's only missed the cut once in 2025, and that was in Puerto Rico in March. Even at the PGA Championship, he was 72nd. Wasn't a great result, but, if you kind of remove that one, which was a major, which he doesn't have a ton of experience at, his game this year has been extraordinary. And there's upside to it, and at 6,800, there's not a lot of guys that bring as many top 10s as you get at Bud Cauley. So I anticipate that he'll come with some ownership with how well he's playing, but I can't. If I'm going to play Scotty Scheffler, I need to get somebody in that 6K range that has upside. I'm certainly going to do so with him. And with my second pick, I'm going to stick down here in the 6K range because I want to make sure I get my value so I can balance out the rest of my roster. This guy I'm going to take here might not be the best course fit, but this is a guy that Spencer mentioned earlier in the show. He's a streaky golfer, but he's underappreciated. I think he's playing well right now. He's striking it well. And that's Eric Cole. We saw Eric Cole again, hasn't missed a cut since March. He's gotten some top 20s, top 10. He's just been very consistent. The putter is coming around. His ball striking has been excellent over the last month. If he's going to strike the ball like he's been the last month and make putts, the only issue with Cole is can he stay in the fairway? He's going to find some trouble, maybe missing fairways. But if he does, Eric Cole has plenty of upside here in the 6K range. So Cauley and Cole for me here. Geoff, I'd love to get your take. Are you interested in either Cauley or Cole this week?
I mean, I quickly realized that I'm a rookie here because even if Tommy's a great pick, it was like an epic strategic fail. You had picked Scotty Scheffler. You had to find some balance probably in your lineup. I should have read the board better because I really do like Bud Cauley. That was the guy I had an eye on, or on a short list here for me down there. His play has just continued to excel. But yeah, I'm just mad at myself because even if you like Tommy, you're not making that move here after drafting Scotty first. That was just a total strategic blunder here, and it kind of backfired after you picked Cauley.
Well, you're learning, Geoff. You learned the draft strategy. There you have it. You were right. You figured it out. But here you go. Now you're back on the clock. You got your third pick. You still have plenty of money to spend. So where are you going to go with your next pick?
Yeah, I could go in any direction. I could keep going higher. I can go lower. God damn, it's crazy to supplement a Fleetwood pick with a Finau pick. A Finau 8,000. I'm a Finau truther, just like I'm a Tommy truther. And the numbers, they're just really impressive right now. He really seemed to have struck the ball beautifully at the PGA Championship. Other parts of the game really came around at the Truist. I think we could be in for a nice little run of the high-end Finau golf. I don't know what the ceiling is in terms of like winning, but again, another pick I really like this week. I actually put it out there. I bet Finau. Scotty's beating us all down. I bet him on FanDuel in a market without Scotty, Morikawa, Schauffele, and Thomas. Without 4 guys, he was 50-1 in regular markets. I took 40 there, right? And for a guy like Finau who doesn't win, right, that seemed like ideal. But yeah, I mean, I'm at the point in my golf betting time where when Scotty plays, I'm now trying to hunt those other markets for some value. I think the math for me on this one.
I think that's a really solid bet. I like that find there, especially when you can get it without some of those top end guys. The other thing that you mentioned that you're spot on about is Finau is such a streaky golfer. When he's in form and playing well, you got to get on board because he puts together weeks in a row, and then he falls apart and he doesn't give you a good result for months in a row. And right now, I think we're heading into that top form Finau where he's playing well, and you got to snag him and get those good results now because there'll be a time later in the year where we'll feel like he's unplayable. So I'm with you. He's on my radar. He'll be someone I'll be playing. I like Tony Finau this week as well. Spence, I'd love to hear from you. What's your take on Tony Finau this week? And then you're up with your third.
I'd like to very quickly just go back one more second on this. I know Geoff's lamenting that he can call it that it's a beginner mistake, a rookie mistake. I made the same mistake. I've been doing this show for years now. And like, in fairness, I did have to worry a little bit about what Geoff was going to do. I mean, after he gave such a glowing takeaway of what he thinks of Colin Morikawa this week, obviously I could have waited a little bit longer to get Colin Morikawa, but I would make an argument that maybe outside of Andrew Novak, you could make an argument for Novak or this golfer. I say Bud Cauley and him are the two most mispriced players on the board. If I got the ability to redo this, I wish I took Bud Cauley instead of Colin Morikawa, and then this pick would have been Colin Morikawa. So, you know, it's a misjudgment on both ends of it. It's an unfortunate error that was probably made. And I did consider it, Joel, because if I would have gone that route, your lineup becomes really difficult to start putting together. And I should have probably game theoried it a little bit better and kind of let you walk into that one. But with this board now being a little bit sloppier and a little bit harder to figure out, I'm going to take Aaron Rai at 7,600. Talked about these being generous fairways, but they're fairways that, one, finding the short grass is a positive, number one player in my model in weighted driving accuracy. The other note that I at least want to throw out there, or two notes I'll throw out there, is he's number 3 in my model in rough proximity. So he's a golfer who's going to find a lot of fairways. And when he does miss the fairway, he's going to be able to scramble out of this rough better than most players. And then if you are worried about the putter, and this is where like some of this long-term answer comes into play, inside of my model, he is 55th overall in strokes gained putting on any generic course. He is 9th overall when I put him on strokes gained putting on bent grass green. So a massive uptick that ends up hitting for Aaron Rai. I think he's a very solid value. I would make an argue that him and Berger together is a really savvy route to go. Unfortunately with it, though, I wish I could have the Bud Cauleys of the world, the Tommy Fleetwoods, the Corey Connors of the world to be able to round out this lineup. And without that, it does make this lineup a lot less sexy than I would like it to be. All
right. Well, lock it in. Audience, you are on the clock. You guys have 2 in a row, so get those nominations in. Albert with 2 already strong ones, so keep those coming as we wait to get those pick locked in. Geoff, I'd love to get your take this week on Aaron Rai.
Well, he's such a clean player, just seems to excel at with the iron play, which is what I've been trying to bank on with a lot of my picks here. Very boring player, not a flashy player, but like I said, you look at the last years of Memorial leaderboards, and sure, but beyond the super elite that seems to win, it's a lot of players that seem to have like an Aaron Rai profile that are right there.
There you have it. You're right. And if you're talking about course fit, finding a profile golfer that makes sense, he's a ball striker, and he's in the 7K range, so you got your value there. So I like the pick. It makes a lot of sense. Audience, it looks like one of your picks is locked in Alex Noren, but you'll need one more. There's a few nominations out there, but you guys needed 1 seconded to lock that in. While we wait, I'll go to you on this one, Spence. Are you interested in Noren this week?
I had this conversation with Byron on his show over on Pat's network, the show that he does here. Look, I think if I say anything positive about Noren, that's probably a negative. I don't think I've ever gotten the guy right before, so just take that with a grain of salt. I would say he's fairly priced. He lacks a little bit of the upside that I'd like to see, but I mean, he was a fringe top 30, 35 player in all iterations of how I built my model across the board. So I do think he is a fairly priced commodity who has come back very strong to start this year from the injury bugs. So I don't really have a strong take one way or another, but I don't think it's a bad pick by any sense of the imagination.
All right. And they followed up with Sepp Straka. First of all, shout out to Albert doing a great job captaining the audience, locking that pick in, keeping this draft moving along. Albert, you might be the MVP tonight. But Sepp Straka off the board. I'll be honest, I was hoping Sepp Josh would get back to me. I had him lined up for my next pick. You know, some people might be turned off because he kind of disappointed last time out, but I think he bounces back. If you look at the numbers closer, he missed the cut at the PGA, but he won the choice, and he's gained over 4 strokes on approach almost every week since going back to March. So his ball striking has just been spectacular, and more recently he's been finding a hot putter. To combine those two things at this course, in the 8K range, I think you get a really good result. So I really like the Sepp Straka pick. Geoff, I'd love to go back to you. Are you interested in Straka or Noren?
Both of them I would have had no problem having. I still think there could be a little bit of value on Noren, but the unknown. It was just the one start, but if he keeps that rolling, like it's actually my expectation for him this week. And Straka, I mean, sometimes you stare down that number log. Like there are moments where you could think like you're looking at Scotty Scheffler irons. I think that's just how fantastic he's been. So there's no besmirching of Straka from me.
Boom. We're all in. I love it. So Straka is endorsed. Audience got a good-looking team to start. A good start to their draft. Let's see how they close it out. Spence, we're back to you here. I guess the one quick question is, any reason you wouldn't play Sepp Straka? And then you're up with your fourth.
No, I mean, Straka was probably going to be my next pick. So I like the selection there, unfortunately. I mean, to be honest with you, like not having Bud Cauley in this lineup has really thrown a monkey wrench into things because I don't really have enough to go up to the top of the board on some of the names that I want. I'm kind of now stuck in this like weird value zone trying to figure out how I want to round out this build in the fashion that I want. I don't love this pick. I mean, that's not really the most glowing recommendation behind it, but top 15 on my model and some of the safety marks with it, he still sees a top 25 grade from an overall rank. I'm going to take JJ Spawn here. There are a lot of different routes, though, that I wish I could have here, and that's really including most of the names that either you two or the audience have taken higher or lower than this total that it is.
All right, JJ Spawn off the board. He's playing pretty well. He's not on my board this week, but I can certainly understand the pick there. Geoff, you're up with your fourth, but I'd love to get your take on JJ Spawn.
Honestly, like I don't have an opinion. I don't feel strongly about it either way. I hear JJ Spawn. I just see how like when people post like the Ryder Cup charts, how he's like 8th or something. Okay, so that's a compliment. But I'm opinionless. Like I'm opinionless is fine. You got to fill a lineup. He does. He's going to be on with those irons. He's going to make the cut. I wasn't thinking about him, but he's just one of those guys. I got my own guys that I got my own guys.
All right, well then let's hear them. You got your own guys. You got more money to spend. You're in a higher range. What guys are you looking for with your fourth pick?
Yes, I'm going pretty high here because seeing how the map will work for me when I come out of this selection, going as high as I can. I don't know if it's getting cocky to call like the shot because we all sort of feel like it's one moment or another. Xander's not going to just finish like second or third. When he shows it, he's probably just going to win. I'm taking Xander Schauffele this week. Just like the full package game, Memorial can be a demanding place. You like to think that there's been enough reps since returning at the beginning of March at the API. We're now going to make what I think our 8th official start of the season. So there's no more talk of rust. Let's go, Xander Schauffele.
I think you nailed it. The same reason I like Xander is what you said. It's like you were a little scared of him a couple weeks ago. It's like, is he rusty? He's only played a couple tournaments. He's played enough. He's now been back, right? He's played. He's got those reps under him. And when does Xander rise? It's in these tough tournaments, these really difficult challenges. Xander tends to rise to the top, and that's what you're going to get this week. So I'm with you. Obviously, I can't afford Scheffler and Xander. I wouldn't be able to do that. But if I didn't have Scheffler, Xander's definitely someone I'd be looking to roster as well. So I like that pick. How about you, Spence? Are you on Xander Schauffele this week?
When I was talking about getting to the top of the board and not being able to afford it, the Xander route is the way I would have done it. I could not afford him either and put together a lineup that I felt comfortable about. So I just priced myself out there. But look, I mean, I think the Xander argument makes a lot of sense for why he fits this venue. I made a decision that I would rather roster Colin Morikawa, and that was kind of my stance that I took early on. But as I said, if there was an ability for me to be able to afford him at a certain point, that's probably what I would have looked to do.
All right. Well, Spencer, before I put my pick in, I'm going to have some fun here. And I want to get your opinion. Caitlin asked, what are your thoughts on Keegan Bradley?
I like Keegan Bradley. I assume that's who you're taking if you would like to talk about him a little bit more. But value in my model, like if you look at that $8,000 range, he's one of the better values that I have in my sheet. You want to talk about quality approach players, 18th for me, and weighted proximity. But there's a lot of different areas that can push him further. He's 5th in rough proximity, 7th when I start weighting it a little bit differently. And he's a top 25 expected driver of the golf ball on similar courses. So you add all of that together, and we have talked as a whole on this show a lot about tee to green acumen. If you take Muirfield Village and you weigh out those dispersion of scoring marks that I talked about and the players over the last 24 rounds that most closely resemble the players that find success here, Keegan Bradley is number 2 in that area over the last 24 rounds. So I think it's a very, very good pick.
Boom. Well, there you have it. I got to. I'm taking Keegan Bradley off the board. Caitlin, great comment. Appreciate it. And now I got a great pick to live my lineup. And I'm going to stay not just in the 8K range, but at exactly 8K. I'm also going to take Matt Fitzpatrick. And Matt Fitzpatrick's making that turn right now where he's playing some really good golf. If you just look at the recent form, he gets you a top 10 at the PGA Championship, really struck the ball well. His around the green game, his ball striking has been there more recently. But if you take a deeper look at his course history here, he's giving you 2 top 10s the last 2 times he's teed off here. And back in 2020, he gave you a top 3. So on his last 5 tries, he's giving you 3 top 10s. He knows, when he's playing well, he can give you a good result on this course. So I think Matt Fitzpatrick's turning a corner. We're starting to see some really good golf from him. And this is a course that he likes, and he can get you a really good result. So balancing out my Scotty pick, I got 2 8K guys where enables me to make this lineup work. And I think both these guys have some upside here. So, Geoff, I'd love to get your take. Are you interested in Keegan or Matt Fitzpatrick this week?
I would prefer Matthew Fitzpatrick. Nothing against Keegan. I love what we're seeing out of him through Philly, through the PGA Championship. Seems like he's finding something again, and on difficult courses that usually could be his jam. So I'm very much invested in Fitzpatrick this week.
Boom. I love it. Pick endorsed. All right, Geoff, you're back up here. You got your 5th pick, 7,200 on average to spend. Who you going with next?
We are up here. I am going with, I'm just going to spend slightly above the average. I'm going to rock Taylor Pendrith, guys. No, he's been in a bit of a slump. He like to think he came out of it at the PGA Championship. He's a guy that I think sometimes when he can ride that form usually. So hopefully this could be the last. The PGA was the start of something. I could get duped, and he could just go back to being that guy. But I'm in on Pendrith this week, 7,300.
Yeah, I mean, I have exactly 7,300 left. I was hoping Pendrith was going to last. I was wrong. It's a great steal, great pick. I'll have to pivot here. But how about you, Spence? Are you interested in Taylor Pendrith this week?
I don't have a massive take one way or another. The one thing I will say about Pendrith, if you at least want to venture into this area of the market and look at some sharp movers, I actually noticed that Pendrith was a relatively sharp mover in all the outright markets, all the matchups, all the placement territories. And that's not public money. That's just hitting him on that. You can look at the ownership percentage for DFS and no, it's not the same game, but kind of equate where that money's coming from. That was all credible money that seems to be pushing it. And if we are trying to find that upside profile that comes into play, there were essentially 4 golfers, I guess, and some of these are better than others in that 7,400 and less range that possess this higher ceiling, lower floor. Minwoo Lee, Taylor Pendrith, Wyndham Clark, which I seem to just not be the Wyndham Clark whisperer anymore. I've played him a million times this year and it hasn't gone right one time. But I think if you're going to throw a random dart at sub 5%, you could go a lot worse ways than doing it with Taylor Pendrith.
Boom. All right. Lock it in. Taylor Pendrith off the board. Spence, you got about 8,200 per pick left to spend. You got two left. Where are you going with your fifth pick?
Well, can you give me 1 second to figure out if I can afford this? If you want to ask Geoff a random question.
We can do that. Yeah. Now, before we spoil the draft, Geoff, I do have a question for you, and we'll get to this at the end too if you want to save it. But is there anyone thus far that you're surprised has not been drafted?
Not particularly. I mean, we all sort of made a move at the really top, maybe except the audience, but they got money left. If I had to say, I'd probably suggest Hovland, just because the scrambling here seems to be a bit of an equalizer for him. Obviously, he can embarrass himself on those tight lies. True, like outstanding iron player, course history. Again, his weakness might be neutralized this week, so that would maybe be the one.
I like Hovland. I think that's a really good call. And Sia, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the show. First round leader, lock it in. Three-way tie. And all three guys Sia's playing for first round leader were drafted on the show. Sia, we appreciate you as always. All right, Spence.
So, first of all, I wish this pick could be Tommy Fleetwood. I wish there was an ability to get Fleetwood there. Second, the names that I was considering here were Hovland, Lowry, Russell Henley. Would have probably taken Keegan Bradley had I had the ability to, but I'll just get burnt by the guy who seems to burn me every single time I take him. I will take Patrick Cantlay at $9,500. And as wild of a statement as this is, because he does not seem to win anymore, I will say that there is more win equity in this route than a lot of these other routes that I could take, maybe outside of the Hovland path with it, which I did consider. The problem with it is I didn't necessarily have anybody in the range of the $600 that I was saving that I necessarily wanted to go towards. It's kind of like a 51-49 sort of a split there, but I'll take Patrick Cantlay, a golfer that at least at the core of what you see at this course outside the last 2 years has good quality course history. Never seemed to get them right, though. I mean, unfortunately, in a 72-man field, it's kind of the pivots that naturally end up occurring to a build that you did not foresee coming. So Patrick Cantlay, 9,500.
Patrick Cantlay off the board. He was the one name I was going to mention when we were talking about a surprise wasn't drafted. So there you go. He's off the board. I agree with you. I'm not sure if I have a lot of faith in his win equity, but in your fifth pick, you might not need him to win the tournament. I think if he gets you a top 5 or 10, which we know, he can get you here, that's all you need. So I'm with you on that. Audience, you're back on the clock and doing a great job getting your picks in as usual. Great job, Albert, tonight. Hideki is locked in if you're first. We'll still need to wait on that second, but there's a few nominations in between Clark, Scott. You do have to make sure you can actually afford that last pick. While we wait for that final pick to get finalized, Geoff, I'd love to go to you. Are you of any interest in Patrick Cantlay this week?
Yeah, thought about betting him. I don't know why. I guess for a moment I thought the audience picked him, but yeah, that probably should have been my suggestion, just based on the course history. I mean, for a guy that's won so little, the books still don't want to give you a break on him one bit. Clearly disappointed at the PGA Championship, but I think most of us we sort of fade him in majors at this point. But an event like this, absolutely.
You know what's an interesting point you just made, Geoff? I just thought about, and while I ask this question, audience, you still need one more. So let's get that final nomination in. You have 7,400 to spend to round out that lineup. So nominations, we need the final votes to finalize. Geoff, my question for you, and this is an interesting one. You took Andrew Novak first. If you were to just say, I think you asked a question like this earlier. If you were new to golf betting and all things were neutral, you didn't know any history, would you have thought Andrew Novak, based on the data you're looking at this year, would actually have been a higher priced golfer than Patrick Cantlay?
Yeah, but there's a lot of puzzle pieces to this. But yeah, if you just started watching golf this year and you tuned in on weekends, I mean, there's one of them you see every weekend, and there's another guy who, I don't know, you might not even have that institutional knowledge that Patrick Cantley's actually a great putter historically, and for some reason this year decided he doesn't hit 5 7 footers that were always money in the bag for him. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a fair question, but we're a sucker for the CV.
Yeah, there you have it. There you have it. I mean, and that's what it's just find interesting. There's guys like Novak, there's guys like Cole that we mentioned that tend to just play better than their price and not get adjusted. And then there's guys like Cantlay who are just kind of going to stay at their more elite pricing because of their history. Now, that doesn't mean Cantlay can't show up this week and get you a top 5 or have a really great result. But those are the types of trends we're looking for to find value in the draft. All right, audience. After doing such a great draft, you failed us. Their last pick has not been finalized. Albert, I will put it back on you. I know there's slim pickings, as a lot of these guys in that 74, 73K range have already gone off the board. But Albert, I will allow you to just make the final selection. You have to be 74K and below, but we need one last pick from team audience to finalize this draft. While we wait on that, all right, there it is. It is Adam Scott off the board to finalize the audience's draft. Geoff, what do you think of the audience's team? Do you think they had a good draft? Anyone on their team that you don't like?
Yeah, it was pretty balanced, right? Like a pretty clear, balanced build. There's no one on that team I want to throw stones at. I thought about picking Scott when I picked Pendrith, but I don't know. Scott just doesn't seem. Some just seems to be off there, but decisions are slim at that point. Last pick 7,400.
Cool. All right, I'm with you on that. Spence, back on you. You got your last pick here, 6,900 to spend. How you rounded out your squad?
I'll create a little bit of leverage here. I think this is a spot that you can consider pivoting even of the Bud Collies of the world if you're just trying to get different with a build. As I said, I prefer Bud Collie in this spot, but I'll take Michael Kim at 6,800. One of the categories that I put together, I called it key scoring. Essentially what that would mean is the players that if you took the scoreable par 5s and then the par 4 locations that are the more difficult ones, the golfers that graded the best for me in that area that were like sub, let's just say, $8,000. Like Andrew Novak would be the best option of that group. And then you have like Davis Thompson, who I cannot afford. I think Michael Kim at least has some parts of his game that make sense. His past success at Nicklaus Designs, not really necessarily there, but I think Michael Kim is kind of one of those boom or bust targets to where at sub 5%, don't be shocked if he ends up producing a top 15 finish, and don't be shocked if he misses the cut. But I think it's a fun way to round out this build here.
All right. I like what I've seen from Michael Kim in your last pick. I understand your reasoning, but, I think he's someone worth taking a shot on here with some upside. Geoff, we'd love to get your take. Would you be interested in Michael Kim at all this week? And then you're up with your last with 7,100 to spend.
I was thinking about him. He was on the short list because his floor just seems pretty high right now. So that is enticing where I don't really feel like there's much equity, like win equity in the other guys. So now I've been deciding between Ben Ann and Davis Thompson, who Spencer mentioned as well. And I'm going to go with Davis Thompson. Not playing great right now, right? 2 missed cuts actually, PGA and the Charles Schwab. So I don't even have maybe he just got some rest after the PGA. Will come back fresh. Nope. I'm running back-to-back missed cuts here. 27th at the Memorial last year, friends. But it was the start of the run which led to his win. He 27th at the Memorial, 9th at the U.S. Open. I want to mention, which is also off a missed cut, the 27th off at the Memorial, and then second Rocket Mortgage, 1 at John Deere. Maybe there's just I don't know, good vibes. He'll get here and be like, this is sort of where, a run of really nice golf started for me last year. I do, sometimes joke that I think he can be a generational flusher. That's obviously hyperbolic, but he does have the high-end approach play, which should lead to some success here. God, hopefully he found it on the range because I don't see it in the on the stack grid, but I'm hoping he found it.
All right. Well, there you have it. I think there's certainly some upside with your last pick at 7K in the Davis Thompson pick, but it's a risky one. But I think the edge there is he's more likely to get all 4 days than, a regular cut event, which is pretty safe to make sure you accumulate some points. Yeah, I found it interesting. Here at the end, we were all kind of competing in a similar range of golfers. So a lot of the guys that went were guys I was thinking about. The guys I wanted, the 2 guys I was between, both lasted to me. I will be honest with you, I originally was leaning toward Akshay, but I've pivoted last second. I'm not going to take Akshay. I'm going to take Christian Bezuidenhout. And if you just look a little deeper, he's really starting to come around with the ball striking. At the PGA Championship, he gained 5 strokes on approach. At the Charles Schwab, he gained over 4. He's typically known to be a short game guy, a good putter, a good around the green. He's been struggling a little bit with the putter. I think that's something that he corrects. He gained strokes putting last week. The ball striking is clearly there. I think there's definitely some upside here with Bezuidenhout, especially if you look at last year. He gave you a top 5 at this tournament. He's never missed a cut in his 4 tries playing here. I think Bezuidenhout has some upside, and from an ownership perspective, might be getting a little bit overlooked compared to some of these other guys in the 6K range. So that's a wrap for the draft this week. As we do every week, let us know which team you think is best. Smash the like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. And, of course, we'll be crowning a new king of the draft next week and doing it all over again. Before we get everyone out of here, we started to ask Geoff already, but we'll do as we do every week. Geoff, 2 questions for you. Is there anyone else you're surprised did not get drafted this week? And do you have a favorite bet for the week?
So I guess I would be. No, it's tough because everyone made their decision, and I guess Thomas not being taken is a bit surprising. The fact is, the guy, he's hitting the ball. He feels like he's hitting the ball as well as anybody's been lately. But I guess off the top PGA, I don't know. Shane Lowry, yeah, for DraftKings for points, Shane Lowry or Russell Henley. That would be my answer.
I was going to say Russell Henley. And Justin Thomas would have been a fair one too. But you're right. There's a few guys this week that I'm surprised slipped through. But Henley, for as well as he's playing, I feel like he's a little bit underpriced. How about you, Spence? Anyone you're surprised did not get taken that we didn't mention?
Probably Hovland for all the reasons that Geoff initially discussed. If you made me give a second choice, it would probably be Shane Lowry. So we're kind of in lockstep there with it. I'm just going to throw this out there, and I don't know what to expect. Like, if you take our last 3 picks and you were to say one of these guys randomly ends up winning the golf tournament and at a big number, look, I don't know what to expect from Davis Thompson. Some of the recent metrics, as bad as they are, weigh sort of well for Muirfield Village specifically, even with the poor results that he's put together. And that's typically something that intrigues me when a golfer is not producing results, missing a lot of cuts, but there's an upside in the profile for that course that you can still find even with the recent metrics. Look, he might come in last place. That's not even an argument against it one way or the other, but upside wise, $7,000 Davis Thompson feels pretty good. I miscalculated originally of how much money I had. That was the pick I was going to make when I thought I could afford him, realized I couldn't afford him and went to Michael Kim.
All right. Well, there you have it. We are aligned there. Spence, last question for you. Is there a bet that you like this week?
I don't know. I mean, this betting board was gross, I thought. I always give matchups on here. I didn't like any of the matchups inside of my model projector. Like, there was nothing of value. If I give the grossest play of all time, I mean, like, we could go down that route. I took Daniel Berger in round 1 at -150 against Justin Rose. That's as much juice as you'll ever see me lay for a wager. But I mean, outside of that, I have a couple outrights that bet, and most of it will be in tournament wagers because I don't think this is a very good betting board, unfortunately. And I know that's a boring answer to give.
I think that's a fine answer to give. You don't have to chase every board. If you don't have something you love, there will be another golf tournament next week. That is a wrap for the draft this week. We're going to crown another king, so follow along. Let us know what lineup you like. Pick your champion. Come back next week. We'll do it all over again. A huge thank you to Geoff Fienberg for coming on and drafting with us tonight. Geoff, your knowledge is always a plus. You're going to win some bets. You're going to make some money following along with what Geoff gives, not just on our show, but on all the content Geoff put out every week. Geoff, before we get out of here tonight, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, right here, Mail Media Network, Weekly with Pat. Do a video for Odds Checker as well, which I pump out on my Twitter feed.
All right. Well, Geoff, we appreciate you coming on. You're always one of the best guests we have on our show. We love to have you back. However, I hope you don't take the crown. We want to take the crown and continue the streak on to next week. But good luck to everyone this week. Let's make some money. Come back next week, and we're doing it all over again. Spence, did I forget anything?
No, I mean, I just want to say very quickly, though, that I appreciate everybody who tunes into this show. This has been a big move for us to get over on Pat's network, and being able to do this show with guys like Geoff Fienberg, and for him to be gracious enough to give us his time on here. It's just a great resource with him. And thank you to Pat for everything that he's allowed us to do on this.
I totally agree. We're super stoked to be here, to be on this network, to be working with you guys. You know, when we moved over here, we wanted to be in the cream of the crop, the best of the best. We got that, and we're super happy to be here, and we're super appreciative of all you guys. You've been gracious with your time, Geoff, you especially, coming on, guest drafting with us, and always our best shows when we get guests like you on the show. So thank you. Good luck this week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, boys.